Hello, everyone, and welcome to another very exciting episode of Coach's Corner. I am Adam Gahabe of Focal Point Business Coaching of Cary, and with me, as always, is Mike Lamb of Focal Point Business Coaching of Utah. Mike, how are we doing today?
Good. How you doing?
I am doing excellent. It is
Yeah.
a fun and busy morning. Actually, it's midday here, but all good. Can't really complain, and if I did, no one wants to hear it. So, I have, if you don't mind, I would like to just jump right in because I think we're going to go right back and forth super quick on this one. I've been
Okay.
thinking, you know how we always try to add value when we have these types of discussions, and whoever's out there listening can basically, we may not be talking about your business or your industry or maybe even a problem that you're dealing with, but you always walk away with thinking about something new, right? So. I kind of want to talk about what are the, let's call it top five things that we're seeing as business failures. Um, why I want to talk about that is very simple. Everyone hears us speak, hears us, orate, whether it's at BNI or presentations that we give or social media or this. Um, and they say, oh yeah, that's not me. Until they start to actually sit down and think about it. And then they're
Mhm.
like, crap, that is me. And so I don't want to do this in terms of I want to call people out or anything like that, Mike, but it's these are the things that I see, and this is awareness. And I want to talk about the things I see, and then I want to kind of really quickly get into how can we avoid them? How can we get past them? How do we make progress through them? How's that sound to you?
Sounds good. Sounds like a fun topic. I might need to take notes myself while we're doing this. No.
But it's
I know,
funny.
I agree with you that there's some commonalities that I see and that come across the board, and that I talk to business owners about frequently. Um, and we can get into them, I guess, really. So,
We will. And just for everyone out there, please know, Mike and I are not immune to any of these problems either. It's
yeah.
it's super funny when people say, you know all of these things, you preach all these things, you talk about all these things, you help, clients with through all a myriad of problems. How do you not have the ability to stop them yourself? And I'm like, because I'm human just like you are.
Yeah, we
And
all
so
make these.
I think,
Yeah.
let me just jump right in. I think one of the biggest things that I see when I'm out there, and one of the biggest problems that I see, especially with small business owners, as they are managing the growth versus strategy and structure versus just keeping the lights on. Things are a little hard right now. And so, business isn't as prevalent as it's been. But one of the things that I see probably the most, and it's pervasive across industry, is lack of focus and lack of attention on the things that are actually driving the business forward. So, my number one problem that I see is death by a thousand cuts, is what I'm gonna call it here. Everyone's trying to do too much, too soon, too willy-nilly, without plans, without purpose. And yeah, I know this sounds all like goals, strategy, structure, yay, and all that stuff's true, but simplify. Only really focus on two, three, four things, and then make sure that every single action for you, for your managers, for your technicians, for your office staff, everyone is aware of what those things are, and you're actually executing tasks that line up with those objectives. My number one thing, right there.
And I'm with you. It's clarity, right? And we talked about simplifying things a couple weeks ago, and simplifying it and making sure. But we need to have clarity on what our business is, who our clients are, and how we're approaching them, right? And how we're
Mhm.
getting work. And we need to get really good at that. And if we're not really good at that, and we want to try and add on the new shiny object or throw something in there and get distracted by something. Hey, I'm going to add this to my business and change my business completely, or just have a couple other people doing this on the side with my business, whatever it is.
Yep.
We can really lose track of the clarity that we need to focus on being the best at what we do. and delivering our product at the right value and making sure that our clients are happy. Um, and it really comes down to knowing our business, knowing our client, and knowing where to go get those clients.
One of those questions I ask pretty commonly is, are you truly busy or are you artificially busy? And that kind of lines up with that point I was just making, because if you're truly busy and the entire organization is marching towards those top three areas of focus, great, perfect, right? Then that means you're being disciplined, you're being efficient, you are communicating your point and purpose well, and you're disseminating down the actions, and everyone understands where they fit into that bigger picture. That busy is good busy. Um, if you're going to 1,000 different networking events, if you're, constantly spending lunches, coffees with prospects that aren't truly prospects, if you are, having your staff continuously change the focus on a day-to-day basis because some new metric popped up overnight and you want to go
Mm,
chase it, like that's not real busy. Actually, let me rephrase. That's not good busy.
yeah.
That's rushing. And
Yeah.
that's chaos. It's chaotic. It's doing a disservice. And so really want people to slow down, to speed up. Let's get some intense focus. Let's really drive home those points and let's make sure that those points and those goals that we set are actually going to move the needle forward.
So
Right?
and it's something we coach on a lot, and I have a quick evaluation for this that you can do as a business owner, as
Hmm?
a salesperson. You can stop and look at what you're doing. And you just have to stop, first of all. You get busy, you're going to appointments. Yeah, it's fun. I'm busy. I got all this stuff. Well, then take time and put it on your calendar to stop and ask yourself three questions.
Okay.
What's working? What is closing business? What is bringing in new business? What is working that I need to
Mhm.
do more of?
Yep.
What do I need to do more of? Number two, what's not working and what do I need to stop doing? If I'm going to coffee all the time and I don't get a single business account out of that or client or work or move the needle forward, then maybe I need to stop doing coffee with these guys all the time because that's not working.
Hmm.
I need to go back to doing number one. What am I doing? What do I need to be doing more of? Because that's
You're right.
working.
You're right.
And then, okay, let's try some new things. Number three. What can I try that can bring more business? But really, let's focus on those first two. What's working and what's not working. And if I need to try new things, plan it in a way that is strategic, not just I'm going to keep trying new
Yes.
things.
That's it.
I'm not. I'm not just playing around with it every month, every week because that's fun. We should have a strategy before we begin the year on how when we're going to implement and try new things if we need to. Um,
Before the year. Oh man, that's key.
Instead of
Like
just every
how
week.
many people have, sat down towards, let's call it October on and done their
Okay, then
planning
we
for
need
that
to
next
figure it
year.
out by the quarter,
Yeah, that
right?
stuff doesn't happen, right? So I mean
We should
that
have our
kind of
Christmas cards planned out already. You know what I'm saying? Little strategy to what we're doing.
runs me right into what I'm seeing, which is number two, which is um the business is being successful in spite of ownership or leadership, not because of ownership and leadership. And that's something that I think a lot of people that don't have their plans laid out, they don't have that roadmap, they don't have that structure, that's how they feel. And what I see is when people operate the business like that, they're much more reactionary. They will hear that little birdie on the shoulder tweeting a few things, and they'll be attracted to that shiny object. And once again, to go back to my first point, that's when you start to get some of that thrashing. But I also see that the types of leadership that comes out of that is it's very sporadic. People don't always know what the organization is doing or what they're moving towards. Yeah, they're getting some results, and that's fantastic. But Mike, how much business are you leaving on the table by operating like that? Probably a
Uh,
ton.
Yeah, a ton of your core customers and your core business.
Yeah. All right.
You're not
So
focused where you need to be.
those
Again,
are a couple of mine. What what are you seeing out there that you're like, wow, this is pervasive. This is happening over and over and over.
um, and this happens with business owners. I see it a lot, and it kind of speaks to this focus thing. Is we need to focus on taking care of our internal operations and what we're doing, our internal customers. I see this a lot where
Mhm.
um, we get focused on adding new things and doing all this, but we forget that we have an internal client base that's our employees and people that work for us. And when we're constantly changing and switching things around, we're losing the loyalty of our own employees and
Yep.
confusing everything and making it harder for them to do their job well. Um, I see that across the board, really. Um, and it's hard for employees to be loyal to the company and feel and get behind a product if we are doing that.
Yeah. I think unfortunately,
And I
that
see it
happens far
everywhere.
too often, right?
Yeah.
It's we forget that we have these internal stakeholders. And, once again, what typically is one of those variables that surfaces when you're in that environment? You are basically making decisions or changes within the organization to solve your perspective. And you, as that leader, are not taking that step back and really looking at the impact, the problem statement, the dissatisfaction, the proposed, changes, and then the impact of said changes across the entire organization.
Mhm.
To put it in the racing world or horse racing world, you got your blinders on, right? And you're only looking through your tunnel vision, seeing it your way. And
Yeah.
I see that it's really hard to get buy-in. So when you start to make decisions like that and you start to make changes like that, what happens? Well, your changes don't stick, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We
Because
try something and it fails.
exactly, right? And or it's slow to start or it's slow to take hold. And a lot of that is simply because you didn't step outside of your, let's call it sphere of influence, your perspective, and you didn't think about this through all the different angles. You rushed to kind of
Mhm.
respond and get something out, and sometimes, Mike, that can cause more harm than it does good.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to our we talk about Gleischer's formula all the time. We're trying to solve our dissatisfaction, not a global dissatisfaction when we're making changes. Maybe we're upset and we want to change something real quick, or maybe our books don't look as good as we want them to be right now. We're not making as much money. Well, we want to change everything and completely stir things up, but it's just our dissatisfaction that we need to look at. Okay, maybe we need to get inside of things and figure out, okay, maybe we don't have to make a global change or add a new product or do these big things that are very knee jerk.
Yep.
Um, it's just our own dissatisfaction and not the dissatisfaction of everyone, you know.
I think that is pervasive, and everyone should take a step back and start thinking about those things. Okay, here's something else that's been popping up a lot lately. Um, as we all know, we've had some turmoil in markets, economy, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, I'm being nice. Um, so typically, when that happens and you start to have a bad month or a bad couple months, the first thing that people are jumping to is, oh, it's got to be my marketing, right? And they're trying to dump more and more into marketing, and they're trying to shift and try all these new things. And granted, this is not like an anti-marketing take, so please don't
Yeah.
think it is as such. But I think that when times are like that and you see a couple of bad months back to back, the time is not to throw more money into something with blinders on when you don't know what
Yeah.
the outcome is, right?
Yeah.
And so the point here is, I think people immediately say, need more clients, need to either spend more or do more around the marketing aspect. And my take is that's the exact wrong thing to be doing. Look at operational efficiencies in how you're targeting, who you're targeting, how you're getting at those people. Look at, first of all, trimming down, slimming down your spend and focusing on being successful with what tools and avenues and meetings and prospecting lists and things that you have at your fingertips today. Then and only then, after you've kind of leaned out and you've gotten really, really good results, you've gotten your conversion rates up with what your core bread and butter, then and only then do you really want to expand. Because here's what I'm getting at, Mike. If you have poorly written SOPs, if you don't have a good game plan on how you're going to take a prospect through every single part of the sales cycle, you're basically just creating more volume of poorly executed sales plans, right?
Yeah.
Yes, your
Or
marketing
not
may
even
get more eyeballs.
existent. Not even
Yes,
existent.
right. So adding more marketing, you may get more conversations, but if your plan's faulty to begin with, you're going to have more faulty conversations.
Yeah. Holy
Thoughts?
cow.
Go
I
for
could
it.
go on for this one. And that honestly, we're gonna talk about this. This is kind of our this is a segue into our next couple of episodes, is we're gonna start talking about ways to raise revenue that don't
Yeah.
require
Yep.
throwing $10,000 at a marketing company that gives you two leads, you know. And the world is shifting right now, and there's a change in how marketing's done, and Google may not run the world like we used to think it did. But we need to figure this out and figure out what works for us. And we need to focus on our clients, knowing how to get in front of them. And sales is a huge part of that. If we have to have a sales team rather than paying someone to do marketing, I know it's not fun managing a sales team and having all
Hmm.
those additional pieces in our team, but and we'd love to just get on and have leads come into our inbox, but we've got to get out there and put our brand forward. And if it's we need to figure out what's working again. What is working?
Yeah.
If we're networking and meeting with clients and that's how it's working at networking events, or um, talking to our current clients and getting referrals, we need to get more out of that rather than throw money towards things that aren't giving us results. And the one thing I would say with that is that's one of those, let's try something new. If it's working and it's going well, then yes, let's keep doing it. But if it's not, we need to quickly recognize that, especially with the marketing side of things. We can be throwing a lot of money at it and it's not getting us results. And it needs to
Yep.
be something we need to stop doing. It needs to be a number two. It needs to be, it's not working. We don't need to do this anymore, kind of
Okay.
thing. Um, no, and I'm with you 100%. Let's try all the old fashioned ways before we start throwing a lot of money at things
I
that aren't
just,
getting us results.
I'm just never a money is going to solve your problems kind of guy. Especially if, unless you go back and break things down to day one and you understand exactly why things are going wrong, some root causal analysis, right?
Hmm.
Money's not going to help. It's going to muddy the waters. It's going to make things more complex. It's going to exacerbate a bad situation or a bad series of habits. And it's only going to surface those negative traits in earnest.
Yeah.
So my take, probably an unpopular opinion, but I think simplicity rules. And I think today a lot of people are jumping to conclusions and they're just trying things because they're frustrated, right?
Mhm. Which,
I've seen runways go from 9 to 12 months down to 1 to 3 months in terms of some of these small businesses, right? They used to
mhm.
feel really good about their, operating revenue and savings and whatnot, and they've just slowly seen margins diminish and things like that. And so people get desperate. And, this is a scary time because what are you seeing? You're seeing PE firms, swoop in. Trades is a great example. You know,
Mm,
um, if you don't have a lot of that runway for operating income, you get yourself into a bind And what do you have to do? You have to do mergers. You have to sell. And short sales mean, that's like blood in the water, right?
Yeah, it's
Um,
the sales should take 3 years, right? Not
should
three
be,
months or not
should be.
13 days if we have to get money in to
And
help
so
us. It needs to
you're,
be process oriented. Um,
heck yeah,
but
right?
yeah, but people are doing these mergers. I've seen a couple, and it's like
It's happening.
to to solve today's problem rather than
PE
being
firms. PE firms are buying
forward
out
thinking.
all kinds of industries, and once again, trades is one that you and I are both in, so we can just, touch on that. These 1 million to 2 million businesses, they're buying five, six of them, and they're just joining them all up because
Yeah.
they've done the due diligence up front. They've created the business profile, the business strategy, all
Yeah.
the
They have the
SOPs.
process in
They are
place, so they'll
buying,
come in and yep.
5x, 6x of these, smaller, companies, and they're just, all right, trucks, 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 resources, assets, skill, knowledge, boom,
Employees, yep.
right? It's like, let me overnight build a company.
We're
This is
all under one
happening.
umbrella now.
And,
Yep,
and,
yep.
and if that's what you want to do, great, awesome. But you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone.
A lot.
And it's like, could you have done this on your own? Yes. Does it take time? Heck, yes, it takes time. And it's hard.
And does
And
it
it
take
takes
investment too?
discipline. Yes, of course.
Reinvesting
Like,
in your business.
anyway, you can tell this is like one of my little passion pet peeves because it's just you see people work so hard to get these businesses off the ground, whether you've been in business a year or 50 years. If you've ever tried to be an entrepreneur, you understand how hard it is to get these things off the ground and to get them moving in a
Mhm.
positive light. Then to just kind of bow out and walk away or sell off or do these things when it got hard. And so instead of being re responsive at an early enough point where you could do something about it, you waited and neglected the issues. And you got to a point where you felt like you had to do something, and that having to do something makes basically means that the business is no longer yours, right?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, um, that's where some people are these days, and it's kind of sad, but you know, I just want to help.
It's great as a business coach, and it's something that we can help with, and getting hyper
Heck yeah.
focused, and so to speak to the positive side of this is we get in with I have a couple clients right now that are making major growth in their business in a rough economy, while others around them aren't because they're very focused on some of these things we just talked
Hmm.
about, focusing on their processes and how they're running their business and making sure they're running it well. They're focused on their employees and taking care of them and making sure that they have good employees that are as invested as they are in the business. And they're taking steps to focus on what's working
Hmm.
and knowing what they do well. And I have one business right now that I think is going to see a 40% growth this year over last year, which is astronomical. It's in the service
That's
industry,
awesome.
and it's incredible. And it's because they're focused on the right things. And they're doing the things that work.
Let me guess those. Those things are not the sexy things. They're not the shiny things.
Not adding new op, not
How
adding
how
new
much
things, not
how much of
not
your time with those people are you sticking around clarity, knowing the things?
clarity on individual employees and how well they can do their jobs, and improving each
Oh,
individual's
I
job in the
love that.
company so that they have it down to a focus and the results that they need. The clarification on what they're doing and the results are that are expected.
You
Um,
are you are getting into one of my most fun-loved topics, exercises, things to do ever, which is employee resource assessment and redundancy review. If you don't have redundancy and skill set within your organization, you have a bottleneck, right? You have a
yep.
choke point, right? And
And if you're that bottleneck, you should
oh, it's
really
even worse.
evaluate things.
It's even worse because not only are you that bottleneck, but that business is unsellable,
Yeah.
right? No one
Yeah.
wants to buy a business where everything sits inside of
No,
here.
they don't want to buy your job.
They, it's because you're looking at it like a job rather than a
Yeah.
business. You're not an entrepreneur, you're not an owner, you are a business operator. Fascinating stuff. I love going down this rabbit hole
Yeah, we could go for
of, employee assessments. It quickly turns into, all right, employee X, Kelly, she's fantastic. She has X, Y, and Z skills. Okay, great. How are you leveraging those skills on a daily basis? Well, I'm not. Okay, so is Kelly in the right job role? No. Let's think about for every single person that we have in the organization, are they in the right job role with the right set of skills that we're utilizing to get the most out of them, therefore getting the most for the business. This is what I'm talking about having that hyper focused on internal, efficiency and operations.
yeah,
This is probably a lot of that similar stuff that you're working with your services client and
yeah,
how they're getting such high levels of growth. Like this stuff doesn't cost a lot of money to do.
no,
Um, it may, and if you haven't done this stuff prior, it may take someone like you or myself to sit down and talk you through the mindset of it, talk you through the exercise of how to go about doing it, why we're doing it, how to tease the value out of those things. But it's one of the easiest ways to get the most value injected into the business operations.
in an
And
investment that you already own, and it's an asset, really. It's something you already have there that you need to a resource to utilize.
yeah. All right. I take it back.
Yeah.
You just kind of got my juices flowing and my mojo moving. Everything
Yeah.
else I said prior, wipe it away. This. If I could do this all day, every day, I would.
Same, same.
You end up doing this organically in any client that you work with, any industry, because I feel like a lot of people don't look at the business operations the way that we are. They're not asking these types of questions. Well, Kelly was hired for an office manager role, so that's what she's been doing. Well, if
Yeah.
she has the skills and assets and resources to do more, why aren't we evolving her job role? Why aren't we co-training someone else who may not have the same ceiling, get them to, take on some of Kelly's work, offload some of those things that are not Kelly level tasks, and let her grow. So now you've done two things, Mike. You have freed up an employee to have a growth plan of themselves. So you're reinvesting in them. They see a future. That person's happy. Kelly's really happy. Secondly, they're getting to utilize these new skills and kind of go off and kind of blaze this new trail that is going to, have the outcome be additional business operations capabilities, processes, matron into product lines. But you've freed someone up. But more importantly, you're also making sure that you don't have a bottleneck because now you have two people in the organization that can do that. Do you know how much easier that is to schedule around things that are going on right
Yeah.
now? It is summertime. It is HOT, some like it hot, right? Here in Raleigh, it's 101 today or something like that. And it's going to be like that for the next 4 days. So let's just say that someone wants to go take a beach day, or someone calls out because their HVAC broke and they have to be home. Now you have someone else to take Kelly's place and can do these things. Oh my gosh, the business continues to function without any letdown.
Oh, Fourth of
Awesome.
July is next week. We got all sorts of people calling off, and
I have no idea what day of the week it
it's
is, let alone the month. So you're right. Anyway,
but that is those are unpredictables that we need to have a plan for. So, and if we
even
have
the
people that can do it,
unpredictables can have some level of predictability. And
yeah,
it's just about sitting down and looking at it through angles, perspectives, and not just your own.
yeah, keep the business running.
Anyway, listen, Mike, this was an absolutely fascinating chat uh, for
Covered
me.
a spectrum here. Yeah.
Any closing words you'd like to have for any of our faithful listeners out there?
No, not nothing. I guess I might. We have covered a lot, so it's like I was just kind of running through it all in my mind. I think the biggest thing I would take away is that there are common problems, but there's ways to avoid those, and don't just jump to a quick conclusion. Don't try to make fast changes. Make thoughtful, process-oriented changes in your business, and if you don't have somebody to talk to about it, call Adam, call me, call somebody that's a mentor or trusted advisor to help you so you're not making knee-jerk decisions that could put your business in jeopardy.
For someone who said that they had nothing else to add, that was quite profound. Um, the last thing that I'd like to go leave listeners with or viewers today is quite simple. If there were any of these concepts, any of these stories, any of these situations, and your immediate response is, well, that's not me, I want you to stop and I want you to think about that a little bit longer because the reality is it probably is. Right? These are common problems that plague all of us. As I stated prior, you and I are not special. These things plague us as well. Before we started taping, what were we talking about? Taking back our calendars and just the struggle of dealing with the time constraints and time pulls from so many different angles and places. We're not immune to any of this either. And so I guess that's my takeaway for most people is please, when you listen to the things that we're saying, be open, be honest with yourself, because it's always when you have a really big need, as in something didn't go your way, where you actually have to start to think about these and to take action. And that's typically when it's too late, or it's harder to do. So please be open, be honest, be thoughtful, think, and we'll get through all this stuff together. Please reach out to us, and we're happy to have any chats.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.